All right, welcome to another Storage Authority webinar. Today we're going to be covering, we're going to be going over the insight of construction costs and what to expect through the whole construction process. I'm going to give a quick intros to our panel very fast. We got Josh Parker, he's our Tech and Operations Director. Kevin Harless is our Development Director.
Yo,
Mark Gooden, Civil Engineer by trade, he's our President of Storage Authority. Myself, Garrett Bird, VP here. And, we're sharing 90 years of our experience with the industry and our insights, real-time numbers. We've helped several owners find land, get approvals, get developed, run a first-class facility. Currently, we have one under construction, another one about to start construction in March, and about four under design. So a lot of real-time numbers and insights we're sharing here today. Before we get rolling here, just want to give a shout out to our sponsors. These are some of the industry leaders, so much appreciative that they're putting this webinar on for us. And then we'll get going. I'm going to hand it off to Kevin to cover our first deck here.
yeah, all right, what I want to talk about is money, and one of the biggest mistakes I see that first time or even multiple developers make it is assuming there's a simple fixed cost for building a self-storage facility, and there isn't. Costs fluctuate based on location, design choice, and 100 other variables that can go into a storage project. I can tell you when we get bids from contractors, they can vary anywhere from $15 to $20 per foot per bid. And so, if you want to effectively understand where the money goes, you have to budget effectively. And that's what's going to keep you from avoiding surprise. That's going to keep you avoiding surprises in the entire construction process. A self-storage project, it's got so many variables that go into it: land, materials, labor, utilities, permitting, and all of those things that they've got to come together the right way at the right time. And each one of those come with a cost, and they cost money. And land prices alone, for instance, those can range from a few dollars per square foot in rural areas to well over $15 in high demand metro areas. And then you have site work, all of your geotech studies, your drainage, your grading, bringing in utilities, you know, all of those things can cost over six figures before you even start to pour concrete on any of these projects, Garrett. And let's talk about the wild card is market fluctuations. Over the last few years, we've seen steel prices swing by 50% in some cases. And it's been just about as unpredictable in lumber prices. And so, that's why the smartest developers build a contingency of at least 10 to 20% for unexpected cost. And if you don't, well, you're playing a dangerous game when you get into your construction cost. At the end of the day, self-storage development, it's all about managing cost and maximizing your return. The more you understand about the cost drivers when it comes to self-storage, Garrett, the more control you have over the project's success.
This is true. This is true. Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to hand it off to Mark for the next slide here.
I want to go over five major reasons why construction costs vary. The more you're aware of this, the more money you can save, the better you can budget. So the first one is the facility size, the facility features, and the location. The facility size is significant on the construction cost when you're using a square foot a dollar per square foot cost. For example, if you're building a 40,000 square foot facility and comparing that to an 80,000 square foot facility, the cost difference can be $10 a square foot difference. So if somebody says construction's costing $65 a square foot, unless you know the size, that has no relationship to your project because the size has a lot of things. And that's because maybe you're going to spend, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000 in signage But if you're 50,000 square feet, that's $1.20 a square feet. But if you're building 100,000 square feet, it's 50 cents a square feet. So facility size matters. Features of a facility that maybe you're going to put bonus features in there, and that usually ranges just $2 to $5 a square foot. We put in 50-foot flags, we put in vacuum cleaners, we put in kiosks. All that really doesn't. It might add $200,000 on a $10 million construction cost. So it's good to get those features in. They cost the least amount, but they actually provide you the most profit when it comes to rental rates. And then the last one was the location. And if you take New Jersey, it's generally 10 to 15% higher to build in New Jersey. It's not a bad thing, but you just need to be aware of that if you're talking to a contractor and you say, "What's the cost of self-storage?" and you didn't tell him New Jersey, he didn't have the experience in New Jersey. The good news with those higher construction costs, you have higher rates. So the second reason costs vary is the land quality and certainly the cost of the land. So, that can vary from 500K to $2 million on any given project. And so, you've got to make a list of the land qualities that affect a project negatively. That's a list you got to start up with: topography, wetlands, easements, those kind of things. So when you look at land, when you buy this land for a million, you're really buying it for $1.5 million. So put that list together. The third one, and this is probably the most important one early on, is when and who you ask. If you ask a contractor with no plans, what's it cost to build self-storage? You're going to get $65, $70 a square foot. I actually talked to a guy last month. He told me his contractor swore up and down he could build it for $55 a square foot. I said, it's literally impossible. Go back and ask him if that includes the site work, if that includes the access control, if that includes, climate control. And he came back and says, "Oh yeah, it didn't include any of those things." So when a contractor gives you a price with a plan, he's giving you the absolute best possible price. It might be 1 in 10. You've got a perfect design, perfect site. And he does that, because he wants to be there when the plans are done for that bid. So you're not necessarily getting a contractor price. If a contractor gave you a price today of $75, I would probably be giving you a price $85 to $100 a square foot, because I'm including everything where contractors just simply don't include everything. Um, Once the plans are bidded, that's not even the final price of construction. You might come back with a contractor and he might come back with $85 a square foot, but I know you've got, $3 a square foot and things that he's missing that you think he's got included. And there's about $3 a square foot of costs that you've got to pay for. You've got to pay for builder's risk. You got to pay for your liability insurance. You got to pay for the permits. So you got to know about these factors that are part of construction outside of the contractor's list. And so that's what when you look, there's so many different things. And then there's the real price, and that's at the end of construction, where maybe you've added 500K of change orders. So that's another $5 a square foot. So you've got to assume there's going to be 500K of change orders when you do your original budget and add that in. So, again, that's $1 a square foot at 50,000, but 50 cents. So those are all important things when you ask and who you ask, because you're going to be confused at the end of that discussion. There's two factors that are rated directly to construction. And these you're putting $1 million at risk if you don't do these two things well. And that is unchecked, unmanaged bidding process and specifications. If you don't have a very good bidding process where you list, here's the plans by the date, here's the geotech report, the date of it, here's a list of things that are not 100% clear. On the plans it points to a vacuum, a dot on the plans that say vacuum. here's the specs for the vacuum. Here's the specs for the gate. So you have to manage that bidding process and put it all together so you're getting complete bids. If you're getting bids that range from 80 to $92 a square foot, you had a terrible bid process. I mean, you might have a couple at the far end that bid crazy. So you got to look at it. But if you're having quite a variety of bids, it's because your plan said gate there, and that's all it said for the entrance gate. That's all it said. But this contractor says, okay, I understand that. We're going to put a decorative gate that matches your fence. We're going to put in a battery backup that matches your fence. We're going to put in the 5 or 6 security features, the eye, the material so your arm can't get cut off. And the other bidder, he put in a chain link fence. And you might laugh at it, but your plan says, gate, he has those options and he's going to come back. Do you really, I bid a chain link rolling gate. Do you really want to put that in next to your decorative fence? And he's going to charge you another 15 or 20 grand. So you've got to manage that bidding process with specifications, details, and it takes a lot more paperwork than a simple AIA contract. The, the last one that goes to that $1 million risk is unchecked, unmanaged construction itself. You need to be part of that construction team. You as the owner, the buck stops with you. You might have somebody, but you got to follow that. Let me give you a couple of just examples. If you delay a project 1 month, let's say you were going to put in 18 renters that month at a $2,000 lifetime value. That's $36,000 you lost because you didn't open 1 month late. Okay. Now, what if it's 4 months late? That's $144,000 you lost because people don't wait around for your self-storage to open. They're going to go rent somewhere else. So if you open 4 months late, that's $144,000. What people don't understand. I mean, I grew up in the construction business. My dad was a developer. You get a change order. We all hate change orders, but you get a change order, and let's say it takes you 2 weeks to get that change order signed. What people don't realize is that whatever time it takes to sign that change order, you usually lose double that in completion date time. It's called vendor stacking. When you have all your vendors lined up, you mess with one, it usually messes with 4 or 5. So, now this guy, oh, we're not ready to put up the doors because there's a question on what bolts and screws we use. Well, he goes off to another job. By the time he gets back, it just goes from vendor to vendor to vendor. So, there's a lot of things people don't realize why construction costs vary, and why we have to have these contingencies. But if you take the time through these 5 different processes and understand them, you can literally save yourself $1 million on a $10 million job.
Good stuff, Mark. It seems like the more instrumental you can be with your construction contract, more detail, more precision. The owner is going to be happy. The contractors bidding are going to be happy because they know what they're bidding on. And end of the day, it's going to save you a lot of money with that precision.
Exactly. And you got to have the written checklist of all these things. It's amazing, there's only 3 phases to development, and often owners think, oh, it's in the designer's hands. I don't have to do anything. Oh, now it's in the contractor's hands. I don't have to do anything. It's exact opposite. If you wanna save that kind of money, and at today's interest rates, that you save $1 million on a $10 million job, you're saving 70 grand a year. You're going to save that again in interest over 10 years. So you're actually saving more in the long run.
Good point. Good point.
Hey, Mark, from the chat, someone commented about fire operations controls, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's something that can vary greatly depending, getting back to location. There's probably a couple other examples you can give us too, things that might vary location to location.
Well, the fire suppression, the fire department has a lot of controls. There are codes for it. But does a fire department want a lockbox on that gate? So one of the ways you control that is having some conversations with the fire department. And really that should be your architect. And in most cases, the fire sprinkler system is actually designed and stamped by the person that's going to install it. So the architect puts enough in there so we don't end up with a cheap system. He knows how it's working. But another example could be architectural standards. There's some towns that not only do you have planning and zoning, but there's a commission on architectural standards. Like we've got a lot of nice buildings at Storage Authority where the front is block, where the front is other type of nice things. But then as you go down where you can't see it from the road, it's the typical metal buildings. That saves a lot of money. But in some of these towns where they have architectural reviews, and it's a special commission, they can say that whole thing needs to be decorative, and that can cost you. Um, I actually had a project in New York where they wanted the front of the building. They didn't want a self-storage. So we went in with a building that it looked like it had multiple shops, different peaks, different colors and everything. The doors were there. They were colored the same color as the walls. And we did get approval. It cost us an extra $500,000. It was well worth it. The location was the entrance to the town, a high population, no other self-storages. The place turned out to be a gold mine, but it's location to location, and there's several of those, and it can depend. 6 months from now, what was important is not important 6 months later because people on the commission change and they have their own mindsets. When it's in front of the town, there's certain specs you got to follow most of the time. But when it gets in front of a commission, it could be three commissioners that want, if you just do this, I'll approve it. If you just add this, I'll approve it. But in general, one of the trends we'll talk about later, self-storage, is they are getting much higher quality. So, I've personally never had one denied. So it's a good time to go through, but the more you know about those things, the more it counts. So, even erection of the steel, it's different from one area to another. It's because it's a labor. Some places it's going to cost you $7, and another place is going to cost you $9 a square foot to erect that steel. So there's a bunch of different things.
All right, Kevin, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, Garrett, I was talking to a friend the other day and he was asking me about putting up self-storage. He said, Kevin, you've been in the self-storage business. He said, isn't it just about throwing up some metal buildings and call it a day? And I kind of laughed and I thought, every decision that you make from, the type of facility that you build to the land that you choose, it's going to have a ripple effect on what you do with your self-storage cost. The complexity and ultimately the profitability of your project is going to depend on these decisions that you made. And take climate control for example. In some markets, you got to have climate control. It comes with added cost. You're going to have HVAC and insulation and dehumidification. And if you're building in Florida or Texas or Arizona, people are going to expect that, and you can charge a premium rent for it. But there's a lot of areas where low humidity and milder seasons, you may be throwing money away. There's areas I've seen where you can build drive up without climate control, and it actually garners more premium rate than climate control does. And it's not going to deliver you as strong an ROI in those areas. So there is a lot of things to these things you have to think about. And then there's land. Not all dirt is created equal, right? A lot looks flat when you actually go out and look at the actual topography of it. All of a sudden, you got to do some serious grading work, and there's environmental restrictions and flood zones and poor soil conditions. You go out and you do a geotest and you find out, oh my God, the compaction ratios on this dirt, it's not going to be able to hold up to the project. So you have to bring in, take out, bring in new soil, and it can greatly change what's going on the project, which is why the due diligence that you do on your property is so critical. I have so many people go, well, hey, I found this piece of property, and the first question I ask is, did you go walk it? Well, no, I saw it online. Go walk the property. You will save yourself a ton of headaches and a ton of time by going out and looking at these properties. And let's not forget now your regulations. Every city has different requirements, and some will let you move forward pretty quickly. And others, I've seen it take 2, 3, even 4 years, and they make you jump through hoops to put in a storage facility. So if you're not thinking about permitting and zoning from day one, your entire timeline, your budget, and everything will just get thrown off track. And the key takeaway I think from the whole thing is every self-storage project, it has a very unique set of challenges. And there's no universal formula to it, which is why it's great to have someone who has done this before and knows how to do it and knows some of the pitfalls that come with it, because every single decision that you make is going to impact the bigger picture of your facility. And that goes down to how much money you're going to make out of this facility. And ultimately, one of the worst things I've seen is people go into construction and they go haphazardly. They get their facility built, and then all of a sudden, all these things start popping up that they have to spend money on. Oh, we didn't do this, or we didn't think about that, or oh, this drainage didn't work. Self-storage is not about going out and throwing up buildings and starting moving people in, Garrett. There's a wide range of complexities to it. And if you've never done it, or even if you have, it's still good to pair with people who've done this before, because it will save you a ton of money and probably make you more money in the end.
100%. Good point on that. Here you are building a multi-million-dollar real estate asset, and how many owners don't even want to walk their own dirt? You got to put the right team around you. I obviously always seek counsel, but validate, whether it's your experts on your team or technology. You got to validate everything.
Garrett, I recommend this to you. When I first started with U-Haul Company years ago, we went out, we looked at dirt, and the CEO of U-Haul, Joe Schoen, showed up one day, and he looked at me and he said, where are your boots? And I said, well, I got boots on. He goes, no, your rubber boots that you put over your boots to go walk the property in case it's, water up to your knees or whatever. And so I always carried around a pair of rubber boots so I could go walk a whole property if I needed to, and a little snake stick just in case I needed to bat off a bad guy, And it makes a big difference, because it's amazing what you'll find and see on that property when you actually go out and do that due diligence and walk it.
100%. Good stuff, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, can you talk a little bit about the app we use that, shows you where you are on the property? You can walk around and it shows you the property lines and where you are on that, because that's very helpful. It shows you the property acreage and all that stuff, but it tells you, hey, this is the corner, turn left because that's the end of your property.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. There's an app called www.regrid.com. It does a lot for you before you even get out to the property. It'll show you topography, it'll show you zoning, it'll show you lay of the land, wetlands, flood zones, all these things on it. It'll show the owner, the size of the parcel, all of these things. And the biggest reason I ask people, do you use Regrid? Have you used it? Because we recommend it to all of our franchisees, and some of the franchisees say no, and I go, well, what is it? Is it cost too much? And they go, well, I don't know. It costs $10 a month. So if you're out looking for self-storage, it's probably one of the cheapest, most effective tools, Mark, that you can use. And it's going to give you so much opportunity. And also, when you're driving down the road and you see a piece of property that you'd like to call on, you can look right on your app and it'll tell you who the owner is. And then all you got to do is go find that owner's contact information, and you can get a hold of them and talk about buying their land. So it's a great app. That's a great point to bring up.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. So, every parcel has its own story. You make an offer with the information you have, and then you get that property under contract, and then you get to work on the due diligence. So your geotech testing, your environmental testing, hopefully you had a topo survey prior, but now you got to look at the grading and does it need leveling? I can share some experiences with some of our owners. Currently, we have one in New Mexico. Got it under contract and just got it the geotech back. Found out there's ledge and that's $200,000 of blasting. We got the seller to split that with the owner, but you get in there and you start discovering what's really going on under the surface there. Our New Jersey location, it was very important to the community that we build it with this architect of faux bricks and a sloped roof. You want to be a good neighbor. You want to meet the good. You want to meet the regs. So things like that could add cost to your project. We had another owner in Georgia. Great site, good math around the numbers, got it under contract, found out there was massive amounts of ledge. You start doing the math on how much it's going to cost to blast it all out. All of a sudden, here we are trying to put a round peg into a square hole. The math doesn't make sense anymore. So, in that situation, our owner had to, get their escrow money back and move on to the next project. So it's just all about, obviously when you're doing your site evaluation and due diligence, you really gotta, once you get it under contract, you gotta race to get all your due diligence done. Don't assume that anybody's doing anything. You gotta make sure you're calling, following up, because you need that information. You need to know what's going on underneath the surface. End of the day, it's just all about get it under contract, full steam ahead on your due diligence. And, information enhances everything. So you don't want any surprises, once you're under contract. One last quick story I'll share on this is another New Jersey location, got the owners provided a wetlands map. Once we surveyed the wetlands, we found out we lost an acre. In that situation, we had to redesign the layout. But we negotiated hundreds of $1,000s down from that seller once we said, hey, we lost some building size here. So, having that right team on your side that can get the trenches with you and negotiate, once you have that new information, now you can negotiate a better deal for your land. So that's really what it's all about. You have your regular cost of your materials and your labors, but now you got to get into the weeds of what's going on underneath the surface. I'll throw it to you here, Josh.
Right. So there are obviously many, many components that impact not only cost, but also quality. And so for all those components, you have to look at it through that lens of cost versus quality. And I'm going to jump over to the chat. There's a question, and I think Ben may have had a sneak peek at my notes, but he asked if there's requirements for video surveillance and requirements for backing up data. And that's the exact example that I planned on using here, but talking about cameras for video surveillance, because there are so many options and setups out there. Do you need full coverage of the site or partial coverage? Stationary single point of view cameras or cameras that pan from side to side, wide angle, or cameras that can zoom in, motion activated versus cameras that are always recording. The storage, 30 days of footage stored or 60 days of footage stored. Is it stored locally on a hard drive or is it cloud-based? Are the cameras hardwired or are they connected to network-based? Wireless network. The difference in all of these considerations can be, anywhere from $300 a camera to $2,000 per camera. And that's not even considering, the ongoing costs of the system. So the key here is that you specify what you want. And if it's not specified on your plans, you're not going to get what you expect. If you don't, specify in your plans, you're leaving it up to, the architect or the engineer. And you don't want to change it after, as Mark's already talked about change orders, you don't want to change it after because it's going to cost you a minimum of 15% more. But most people are going to hand over these plans and never discuss any of these components. So there are some things, that you want to be the best, and some things that, maybe you can get away, maybe some components you can get away with, not the best. And that's something that's going to be determined by you and maybe by your location, right? So if you're in a location, high crime metro area, maybe more important to you that you have the best, camera, system that you can afford with the full coverage and, not miss a single inch of your facility. But then if you're in a more rural area, not a lot of foot traffic, you might be able to get away with less cameras or a camera system that has less features. Another example, is countertops and cabinets. There's 4 options for countertops, right? Quartz, corian, granite, formica. They all have their pros and cons. We like to go with quartz because it's high quality, it's impressive, it has that high-end look and feel. But what's important to you? You have to decide that. That's something that you have to decide and specify, on those plans. And the same's true for the cabinets. Are they 3/4 inch plywood, 1/2 inch plywood? Are they particle board? Are you going for cost, for durability, for appearance? Do you want that high end look, or do you want, something not as high end? That's not something that we can decide at Storage Authority. We're always going to go for that high end look and feel. That may be different for you, but again, are you leaving that up to the engineer or architect to decide? It's your project. You've got to be the one that specifies that, and you've got to choose that level of quality or those components or those specifications that you want for your project. In the end, if you don't, you're going to either end up with the wrong quality or the wrong price, or maybe both. But again, it's not up to your engineer or architect. It's up to you. Here's another one: bollards. What size are they? 6 inch, 8 inch, 9 inch? How many are there? Does the price, does it include the bollard covers? I can tell you, if it doesn't include those bollard covers and you've got, 20 or 30 bollards on your site, if you've got to go and put those bollard covers in after construction, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars that you're not going to want to dish out right after construction, right? Every component has got to be thought about and planned out and specified in those plans. The Storage Authority system, we go over all of this with our franchisees. So there's literally a couple hundred components that are specified in the plans before they're handed off. These are decisions you can't afford to leave in the hands of someone else. They're not going to only affect your build cost. They're going to affect your operational costs, your ongoing maintenance costs, and ultimately they're even going to affect your rental rates. So, a lot of components. I covered just a couple of them here, but there's literally hundreds of components that need to be specified.
Awesome.
Josh, it is with your construction plans for your cameras and your low voltage and some of the other access points and things like that. A lot of times when these engineers and architects they just draw up the specific plans. Is there any need to put in, extra conduit or thoughts of maybe things expanding or different things coming in the future in your construction plans?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to be thinking about the future, and especially if you're building in phases. Where are those wires coming from, and when you go to build that second phase or third phase, that all has to be planned out from day one.
Valid. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I just want to add a little bit here on what Josh says. I see a lot of contracts come through, and on the plans for the cabinets, it says to be determined by the owner. And on the colors for the trim, it says to be determined, to be determined, to be determined. You have a bad set of plans and you have a bad contract when it comes through and there's 4 or 5 allowances. That's a bad thing. Your goal, you shouldn't sign a contract that has a single allowance. If you can't figure it out, if you got to figure it out later, when you figure out an allowance, it's like a change order. It takes time to figure out, well, what color cabinets do I want? That's a delay in the project. And that's going to cost you, that $36,000 a month. So you've got bad plans. If there's an allowance for the cameras, there's an allowance for the security system, there's an allowance for the music, there's an allowance for the gates. There's an allowance for all these things that were not on the plans. I mean, allowance is better than a change order because it's in some money, but 80% of the time, if you got 20,000 in for the cabinets, it's gonna cost 30,000. And the problems with the allowance is it's after the loan. They use that allowance in the loan. But if you're gonna have a self-storage, you really do want to have a money box in that cabinet. You want them to have something on the counter? No, let's put a money box right underneath. Not a lot of cash comes in self-storage, but a little bit does. A nice lockable money drawer right there on the counter. So, your architect should be designing the cabinets in full with no to be determines. And the same thing, I mean, we actually have a coffee station. That's all designed out and looks beautiful. So don't do it in a rush. Do it during the design periods.
Points.
Valid points, valid points. Jumping back in here, this is, really understanding, contractors' bids. And, a majority of contracts are written with AI or AIA contracts. That's your American Institute of Architects. Some of the key provisions that you're going to see is, scope of work, payments, change orders, like we've been talking about, dispute resolutions. But if you jot anything down, jot this down. These contracts are not in favor of the owner. You got to remember that. You got to have this language in. Any change order has to be approved by the owner. Now, that could be an increase, that could be a decrease. There could be no price change, but a different model or material. You want to see, this is your project. You want to see every change order and you want to be the one approving it. It's your money. You're the one who's taking out the $10 million loan plus. So, you want to be involved with that, and you definitely don't want to leave that up to someone else making approvals for those change orders, and you find out, you're $500,000 high once it's time to pony up. Looking at some of the recent projects we actually have the one going on right now. We're seeing $82 to $100 a square foot. That's a big swing. So what's that really tell you? One, everybody interprets the plans differently. Two, you got some contractors out there really busy, so maybe they're coming in with higher bids. So, three, you gotta really look at, are we comparing apples to apples? Is it an inferior model they're putting in and bidding on? That could be the fence. Are they just putting up regular old, chain link fence? Is it vinyl fence? Is it a nice, decorative, attractive, wrought iron fence that you want to really have that aesthetic out front of your facility? We've seen where, at the end of the project, things like this get left off. So minor, but when you think about it, but who's cleaning this 80,000 square foot self-storage site? That could be a $10,000-$20,000 bill you weren't expecting. Got to be on the plans. Who's putting the numbers up? Here's your CEO. And then you do the final walkthrough, like, where's all the numbers on my unit? That just takes time, and that's more money that you weren't planning on doing. And we've seen so many handoffs where, that's missing out. So it really just comes down to, you really, again, going back to being instrumental on the construction contracts. We like to have at Storage Authority an addendum with all of our owners, going back to who's paying for what. Is it an inferior product or is it first class? I mean, it could be something like a flagpole. Yeah, I can put a standard 20-foot flagpole up, and that's what they're going to put up. If you don't have, you want a 50-foot, real beautiful flag out there that, now you got a landmark out there in your community. Costs a little bit more, but, that's a one-time expense, and you're going to have that for the rest of the life for your facility. End of the day, it just goes back to being instrumental, with these contracts. Be involved. Too many owners just kind of leave it up to, their experts. You got to have the right team on your hand. Obviously at Storage Authority, we're vested in the best interests of our owners, so we're always looking out for them. But no matter, which route you go, just make sure you're involved.
Hey, Garrett, can I add a couple of quick things there?
Absolutely.
Garrett mentioned that you should approve change orders. Well, everybody agrees to that. It sounds like common sense. But what I'm telling you is in that AIA contract, And unfortunately it's 100 pages of garbage. And so you start reading through that, your brain just like, and it goes on. But there's one paragraph in there, and I'm telling you this, it says all change orders shall be approved by the architect. So you've got to go in there and wipe that out and say all change orders shall be approved by the owner. When the change order comes to you, you get the input from the architect and then you approve it. But you got to believe that that contract is not in your favor. And something as simple as that, we have to go through and change it. And sometimes it's multiple places that says the architect's in charge. Well, he's not, because next thing you know, you'll be paying out for things you didn't even want changed, you know? So that's a good one. Garrett talked about, the addendum we put together, and he talked about these prices coming in different. Well, our prices should all come together because we have good plans. And so when they come in different, we said, hey, our bid package included this list of addendum. It told the gate type, it told all these things. It's 30 things that we know they're going to miss. And they said, oh, no, we didn't include any of that stuff. Okay, well, no wonder why you were cheaper than everybody else. And this is hard for under people to understand as well. Cameras and signage, in 8 out of 10 contracts, it be on the plans and the contractors won't bid it. And then you're going to say it was on the plans. And then you're going to go to court and that contractor is going to show, look, here's the last 20 sites I did. I did not do the cameras and the signage, and you're going to lose. You're going to pay that $80,000 extra. So just because it's on the plans doesn't mean it's a contractor's job. That's why we put that addendum out of 50 things. In that AIA contract, it says, after 7 rain days, you're paying more money. And in Florida, that's a lot of money because it could rain 7 days. It could rain all summer long. That you got to say you can't allow that contract in Florida, because you'll go broke. They got to work in the rain, put on the rain jackets. So there's a lot of things in there that, and that's why, banks require that $500,000 in contingency is because we haven't, as a group, done our job. And that contract is a big one. And it's got to be read by you, no matter how hard a reading it is. And certainly by your team as well. So just those couple of things. And nobody puts the door numbers up. No contractor put those door numbers up unless you have it in that addendum. The door above the door, they should be red. They should be 3 inches. They should be vinyl or whatever because otherwise they're just going to put up the cheapest ones they can find if they put them up. So that's why we give out those lists. But it's most contractors are good, but if it's not on the plans, it's not their responsibility. And we've learned a couple dozen things that we know even on the plans they often miss them. So let's get it bid properly.
Valid points, Mark. Valid points. I'll throw this slide here to you here, Mark.
I want to talk about 8 trends that will help you in your self-storage development. Just understanding them is going to help you plan better. The first one is, generally there's more paperwork now than there was. COVID created paperwork. COVID created all these different types of electronic distribution. So there's more paperwork for the approvals. There's more paperwork for the lenders. So what that means is, it costs a little bit more, but you've got to understand more paperwork also equals more time. We're seeing banks, used to say, oh yeah, close to 30 days we'll have that contract. Now it's close to 60, even 90 days to get a bank loan. So you got to start that at the right appropriate time. What we are seeing over time is that new facilities are higher quality facilities. They just are higher quality. They're nicer, and that makes sense. We're in a different league, and so if you are building a nicer plan, you should be charging the same rates as the guy down the street that has barbed wire fence or no fencing. So you got to take that into consideration when you do your rental rates. Another trend, buildings are getting better quality, but the management is much slower to higher quality. So we're still seeing a lot of poor management out there, poor managers. They won't rent a unit to you unless you beg them to rent a unit. So, as Kevin said, walk the land. He will also tell you visit every one of your competition and grade them. He's got a grading sheet 2 pages long, so, now when we got to set our rates, he can compare them. So you got to grade the facilities both for quality of the construction and the management. Um, Another trend, construction costs are temporarily down compared to their peaks when steel was at a peak, concrete was at a peak. They were actually putting in extra contingencies for just the cost of products going up. So that's down. But how much will it fall? I don't think it's going to fall enough to wait. Because even 3% interest year after year, if inflation's 3%, self-storage construction's going up 6 or 7% every year. I built my first self-storage, back in 2007, 8, 9 during the recession. I built two of them at the same time, interest rates 8%. Um, it seemed crazy. People thought it was crazy, but in 2 years, I was ahead of the game because mine was done and the new costs were even higher, and there wasn't this inflation thing going on. So um, costs are down temporarily after the peak. Um, Kevin mentioned this before. Another thing in some areas is non-climate control and drive up are nearly the same price. And I bring that up because what you see out there, another trend is larger multi-story facility with no climate control. That is the worst way to go. You always want some of both, but sometimes in multi-story you can't get both. So just be aware, you've got to look at temperature control versus non-temperature control. A lot of people get away with temperature control versus humidity control. It's a big difference. One controls the humidity, one controls the temperature. But you got to look at those costs to decide which ones you're going to do. Um, Trend number 6 is there's more technology out there now, kiosks, and all kinds of like camera systems. If you're in Detroit, you're going to have the best camera system. We got one going in Detroit right now. They're going to have the top of the line. Garrett and I talked to somebody in San Francisco. I mean, it's so bad in San Francisco. You need the best cameras, plus you need a guard full time. So you've got to look at that technology that's available. And certainly with the camera technology, you want to be able to see it on your iPhone 24/7. You want to be able to see it on your home computer, but that's pretty standard these days. So more technology. Number 7, as I mentioned, larger multi-story facilities. Now, just because that's a trend and you see more of that doesn't mean you should be doing that. That's being done by the REITs because they would rather build 130,000 square foot facilities versus 260,000 square foot facilities. They've got the money. It's going to cost them more per square foot to build. But they're going to make more per facility because the facility is so much larger. We're still quite often looking for 5 or 6 acres and building 80,000 square feet single story, a gross square footage. So, but it's a trend. Everybody tells me that's all I see. That's all I see. Well, that's on the main roads where is too expensive to buy 5 or 6 acres, but it's not the only thing being built out there. The other trend, obviously, that's continuing over the last 4 years is there's simply less construction going on than would be if we didn't have the fears out there, and that's out there just in general in this world. You see it all over the place. The people that are doing it now are when interest rates are down to 3 or 4%, or you can borrow again at 5% even. Everything's going up. Land's going up, construction costs going up. So to me, less construction due to the interest rate and other factors equals more opportunity. That's kind of overview of the trends. And And some of these trends can be more local than others. So, you certainly have to take a look at where you're building.
Excellent points, Mark. Let's see. All right, Kevin. Did I
Yeah,
skip a slide there? Here we go. What are
there you go. So, the next keys and takeaways, and if there's one thing I want everyone to take away from today, it's self-storage construction. It's not about just getting a building up. You have to plan for success before you ever break ground. At Storage Authority, we have an over 200-point interactive checklist that we put all of our franchisees through, and it goes through all those intimate details that you need to be on top of when you're developing a self-storage project. I've seen projects thrive because the developers took the time to budget properly, hire the right professionals, and think through the financials from the very start. And I've seen projects fail, or even worse, didn't even get done because someone tried to cut corners, or they tried to underestimate cost, or they hired people that knew nothing about self storage, and those things just don't work. So what's next? Surround yourself with a strong team, architects, engineers, contractors, and make it people who know self storage inside and out. You do not want to be a guinea pig for someone trying to figure out self storage and self storage contracting, development, designing as they go. You just don't want to be that guy or gal. And second is budget for the unexpected. No project runs perfectly. So be prepared for that. And finally, do your homework. A thorough feasibility study, it's going to tell you a lot about whether your project makes financial sense before you even commit to the land. At the end of the day, the best self-storage projects are the ones that are well planned, well budgeted and well executed. If you take the time to do it right, you're setting yourself up for long-term success. And you'll see on the next slide, if you want to stay ahead of the self-storage game, we've got you covered. Our blog is packed with expert insights on everything from site selection to operation, to marketing strategies. Whether you're looking for construction tips, financing advice, or ways to maximize revenue, I guarantee you there's a blog in there that breaks it down, or reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to go through it with you, or come join Storage Authority and we can handle all of that for you and have a great operational plan ready for you if you're looking to develop storage out there. So don't miss out. Go in. We're going to send everybody this webinar deck. It's got a clickable link where you can go in and join our newsletter and our blog. And I want to thank everybody for spending their time with us today. And at this point, I'm going to get it back to Garrett to see if anybody has any questions that we can dive into.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, before we jump into Q&A, like we always said, self-storage is a fantastic business, real estate asset. Whether you use the storage authority team, just find a way to get involved. If anybody's listening and they're thinking about developing, it's just a fantastic asset. You want the right team that has your best interest on your hands. So whether you do want to reach out, just have an intro call and, ping any of us for a couple questions. We're here to help. We love this industry. This is why we do this. But no, we'll go ahead and open it up to a little Q&A. So if you want to go ahead and type your questions in the chat box there, we'll do our best to get to them.
And Garrett, well, we'll see if anybody has any questions. Can you go back to slide 3 real
Sure.
quickly? Oh, you passed it. Next one.
One more.
Well, yeah, that one right there. There's one of the 4 books that our team has written, Crush Your Competition. That's 52 weeks of marketing. That's going to allow you to make a lot more profits. But we also have 3 other publications that you can get from Garrett. And that is Self-Storage Your Vehicle to Wealth? We have another one that's just simply self-storage uh, development, construction, some guidelines there. And then we have a real short ebook that Kevin just finished up last week, and it's called the 12 Steps or the 12 Keys to Self-Storage Development. It really that you want to at least get that one, 12 Keys to Self-Storage Development. It's, I don't know, 18 pages long, so it's just a 15-minute read. But it starts with research and planning, searching for land, so it goes through the steps in a little bit different format than that. But if you're looking to see what the whole package is, email Garrett for that book, the 12 steps for self-storage, successful self-storage development. You can get them online, but Garrett's a nice guy. He'll give them to you for free.
Let's see. Thanks, Mark. A couple questions here. Earlier, Stephen, not 100% sure on this question, but suggests using consensus docs templates. I'm not 100% sure if that's just a recommendation there, Stephen, or a question. But I'll jump to Jignesh. Great information on construction costs. How much percentage, approximate range, would you, let me scroll down here, would you account for soft costs for the total project cost? Good question there, Jignesh.
Soft cost typically means the design of the project by your engineer, your architect. It can mean your attorneys. That is the majority of the soft costs. And that can be $300,000 to, and it doesn't change a lot whether you're designing a big project or a small project. Yeah, it could vary $50,000, but I'm assuming you're building a project 60 to 80,000 square feet. The design and your legal costs and your accounting cost is somewhere around 300,000, plus or minus 50,000. There are some construction costs that are the responsibility of the owner. And like I said, those are permits, whether you consider them soft costs or construction costs. I consider them construction costs because they are part of that. They're not paid by the contractor, typically, depending on your contractor. But it's a great place to go is you can buy that. I forget one of the self-storage magazines, and they do a yearly magazines, and they actually break down things from cameras, so much per square foot, fencing. They'll give a range of all the costs, all the components in the almanac. That's what it's called, the self-storage almanac. And they give a range of component after component, and you'll see it varies. This component might be between $1 and $2. So, and they've done this by studying the whole United States, contract after contract, and they give large variances. And they also provide operations. What does it cost for marketing for self-storage? What does it cost for that? Garrett, we've bought it in the past. You recall how much that was? $50, $100, but it's
Yeah, it was under 100, that's for sure.
yeah. Self-storage almanac, that's a great thing to buy.
Just want to go back a couple slides too. If anybody needs an introduction to any of these the vendors that supported this webinar, I know Ryan with Pro Engineering Consulting's on the call, but Bank 59, you just want to have an intro call, I'll gladly send me an email and I'll do an email introduction to any of these vendors. They're all fantastic, so we champion for them as well. Let's see. Another question from Ben just came in. What kind of cost difference can you expect with repurposed existing commercial versus ground up construction?
You know, two different answers to that. Generally speaking, what that saves you doing with if you're converting something, it saves you time. It doesn't necessarily save you money. Okay. It doesn't necessarily save you money, but it saves you time. So that's a great thing because we know what that means when it comes to time. If you can shorten your construction down 3 or 4 months, you made 150 grand. Now, that being said, we have noticed where land is extremely high, sometimes you're getting that building undervalued. So, if you had the land and you were going to build that building, it might be a $4 million budget, but you can buy it for 2 million because the land's worth 1.5 million and they're only charging you 500,000. So in some cases where land, especially where land is very high, um, finding something you can convert, an old grocery store, an old furniture shop, an old big box. But be aware, it's not easy to find them. Everybody is looking for add-ons. Everybody's looking for big boxes. Kevin will be the first one. Our whole system is we don't wait for it to be posted online. We knock on the door. We send an email. We make a phone call. Um, Kevin, you might have done some big box conversions. Have you? Did you notice the difference in price?
Yeah, I did several big box conversions, and yes, if you do get the right building mark, if you're buying it for sub $30 a foot, you can get a really good deal and build out the storage. But the thing you have to remember is you got to do some great due diligence on these buildings because you could be buying somebody else's problem. A lot of times you go and you find out these things need new roofs. They've been completely stripped of all their utilities, or maybe you go in and the thing is, you really need a large enough building to where you're going to have enough net rentable square foot to make a project pencil and get you the funds out of it or get you the cash flow out of it that you need. And sometimes when you go into these buildings, you think, oh, I got a 70,000 square foot building here. I'll get 60,000 net rentable square foot. And when you go in, you realize, oh my gosh, I can only get 45,000 net rentable square feet. So there's a lot of things that go into these. If you find the right one, it can be fantastic. I've done 7 of them, and they were all really good. But you have to find the right building, and competition is pretty high for them right now.
Yeah, 15 years ago, I remembered 15, 20 years ago, I could drive around town through several towns and I'd see an empty Walmart. I'd see an
Oh yeah.
empty, you don't see that anymore. They're sold. I just saw Costco move across town, and within 6 months, the old Costco, and this was huge, the old Costco was a self-storage. 6 months later, the signs popped up. So you got to be fast to these when they're there. And
One of the things, Mark, too, I'd like to interject is a lot of people will find one of these old buildings and fall in love with it because it does meet some of the criteria and the building cost is good, but it might be on the outskirts of town or in an industrial area, and then all of a sudden you have the storage facility that in the right part of town would have broke even in a year and a half, but now you're sitting here trying to break even 4 years down the road because you built it in some industrial area where it's not convenient to your customers. So that's one thing to be very careful about with these conversions is where they're at.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Kevin, is you got to do the same due diligence to make sure it works feasibility wise as you do for land, the demographics, the square feet per person, the rental rates, all that has to be checked. Just because you get a good deal on a building doesn't mean you should build.
100%. Yes, sir.
Another,
Got another
go ahead,
great
Josh.
question. Another great question just popped up into the chat from Brian. With the Storage Authority platform, wouldn't your system have cabinet type colors, countertop types, gate manufacturer you deal with, fencing type, company predetermined, to make the process more streamlined and easier for potential franchise owner?
Um, Absolutely. And ours do. I mean, ours do. We're probably the only ones that do. I mean, we specify not only the vacuum, but how many voltage, the battery backup. We want quarters in our machine because we let that people use it for free. We don't want dollar bills machine. So every one of those things, the size of the bollards, even the lip in the concrete to keep the water out, the office design, the shelving design in the office. We have, you ever go into a retail place and they got this rubbery, flexible vinyl crap trim around the floor? No, we got hard trim with a specified color. And the same goes with the signage. So not only do we have the signage designed, we have signage experts that we can know and trust. So that is the advantage of a self-storage. And Josh, I think you paid him to ask that question, but because that is the
It's my favorite question.
yeah, really, it's what we're all about is making it easy.
Yeah.
You know, and in the beginning, we used to give two choices. You want a 25-foot flag or a 50-foot flag? Well, we've even learned they don't want two choices. They just want one and they want the 50-foot flag. And that's what we do on every one of our designs. So that's the advantage. Most of our franchisees are very, very busy. They have no time left. So, but they're going to put in a few hours to make it work. They're going to give up, 5 hours of scrolling every couple of days, and make it work. But that's what we do. Our colors are red with gray. So it's all detailed.
And not just any red. We've got a special code for the red. It's specified.
Yeah, we're one of the few even building a 10 by 20 in the office. So when a customer comes in for efficiency, boom, they can look at the size, and right there in the office, you can determine, what size is going to be fit your best interest. So not too many people are doing that as well. Any more questions out there you want to throw in the chat before we sign off here?
I see one we didn't talk about here. It says recommended consensus docs for templates for hiring contracts and architects. Yeah, we have it for contractors, architects, and civil engineers. So what we've put together is a laundry list of these are all the permits that we can think of. And there's a dozen of them, the geotech, Kevin talked about old buildings. That the concern there is the environmental phase one report. It could be that it's just not going to work because there's $200,000 worth of contamination, or maybe self-storage has a high square foot load per person. A lot of buildings don't have enough load capacity in their floors. So we have a laundry list for all of the things that need to be in their contracts, and things that we actually ask questions for them to tell us. What did we miss any permits? What is the time frame for the permits? And then we take it a step further and we meet with the town and we confirm a lot of these things. But yeah, you just don't want to hand over a plan to an engineer, because one will not even, he'll look at the endangered species at the end of the project. We look at them day one in the conceptual plan, because it's just going to the state files, typically online, and see if there's any endangered species that, birds, frogs, turtles. So we not only have that list, but we also make sure that the things that are the least costly that could stop a project or hurt a project are done first.
Yeah, to Stephen's point on the consensus docs, our franchisees don't need consensus docs. They don't need to pay for that service because we've already done the work and ironed out all that contractual language for them. We have examples and things that they can use. If you're doing this on your own, though, and you're not a developer, you don't have that experience, certainly, looking into a service like consensus docs, that's going to help you with that language, certainly well worth your time. But that's, that again, back to the franchise system, that's the benefit of going with something, like Storage Authority franchise, because we've been there, done that. We've got that language for you, and can certainly, help you out, every single step of the way. So.
Awesome. Well, not seeing any more questions coming in. Next webinar, I thought we had another question, just anything. Appreciate it, Ben. Next webinar is going to be March 13th. You're going to want to tune into this one. It's going to be on site selection, best places to build and why. So if you did register, you should see that coming up, but you may need to re-register as well. But I look forward to hosting that. That's going to be March 13th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Appreciate everybody who joined us today. I know we went a little bit long, but hope you got some valuable nuggets out of this one, and we'll see you next time.